Daehyun stared at the datapad in his hands, his stomach twisting into knots. The manifest glowed in the dim light of his small cabin aboard the trading vessel, Crimson Dawn. He had reviewed cargo lists 1,000 times before. Food supplies, medical equipment, mining tools, engine arts. Nothing unusual. Nothing that made his hands shake like they were shaking now. But this time, 2 lines on the manifest made him read them again and again. Hoping he had misunderstood. Item 847. Salvage property. Female, adult, species, Ashen. Item 848. Salvage property. Female, juvenile, species, Ashen. Salvage property. That was the term the Galactic Trade Consortium used when they wanted to make living beings sound like broken machinery. Daehyun had heard rumors about this kind of cargo, but he had never seen it on his own ship. His supervisor, Kreth, was a Velran merchant with cold eyes and even colder business practices. But even Kreth usually kept his darker dealings hidden from the regular crew. Daehyun stood up and walked through the narrow corridors of the ship. His footsteps echoed against the metal walls. The Crimson Dawn was a mid-sized trading vessel, capable of carrying cargo for hundreds of clients across dozens of star systems. Most of the crew were asleep now. The ship operated on a standard cycle, and it was currently the 3rd sleep shift. He reached the main cargo hold and pressed his hand against the scanner. The door hissed open. Inside, rows of containers stretched in every direction, each labeled and organized according to consortium regulations. Daehyun had worked as a cargo specialist for 12 years. He knew every inch of this hold. He walked past containers of grain from Earth, past medical supplies bound for a colony world, past mining equipment destined for asteroid stations. Then he saw them dot in the far corner, away from the main cargo routes. A small holding cell had been set up. It was barely larger than a closet. Inside, 2 figures huddled together on the cold floor. Daehyun approached slowly. His heart hammered in his chest. The woman looked up first. Her eyes were large and dark, filled with a fear so deep it made Daehyun want to look away. But he did not. Her skin had strange markings, like tattoos that glowed faintly with a soft blue light. But the glow was weak, flickering like dying stars. The little girl pressed against her mother, her face buried in the woman's shoulder. She was tiny, perhaps 6 years old. She had the same glowing markings as her mother, but they were even dimmer. Daehyun had read about the Ashen. They were a peaceful species from a world on the outer rim. Their planet had been caught in a war between 2 major factions. The Ashen had no military, no weapons, no way to defend themselves. Their world had been destroyed 6 months ago. Survivors were scattered across the galaxy, and most had ended up as refugees. Or worse, "I am not going to hurt you," Daehyun said softly. He spoke in Universal Common, the language most species used for trade and communication. The woman did not respond. She just stared at him with those terrified eyes. Daehyun noticed the chains around their wrists. Not heavy chains, but electronic restraints that would shock them if they moved too far from the cell. His jaw tightened. This was wrong. Everything about this was wrong. He had joined the consortium 12 years ago because he wanted to see the galaxy. He wanted to be part of something bigger than himself. Earth had felt small to him, limited. Out here, among the stars, he thought he could make a difference. But somewhere along the way, he had become just another worker, just another person following orders and looking the other way. "My name is Daehyun," he said. "What is your name?" The woman's lips trembled. Finally, she spoke. Her voice was barely a whisper. "Lyra, and your daughter?" "Nira." Daehyun nodded slowly. He looked around the cargo hold, making sure no one else was nearby. Then he crouched down to their level, keeping his distance so they would not feel threatened. "I saw the manifest," he said. "You are being sold. Do you understand what that means?" Lyra's eyes filled with tears, but she did not let them fall. "Yes, the buyer is waiting at our next stop. We arrive in 48 hours. Lyra pulled her daughter closer. "Please," she whispered, "please do not let them take her. Take me, sell me, do whatever you want. But let Nira go. She is just a child." Defiance felt something break inside his chest. He had seen suffering before. The galaxy was full of it. But there was something about looking into a mother's eyes, hearing her beg for her child's life, that changed something fundamental in him. "I need to think," he said. "I will come back." He stood up, but before he could leave, the little girl lifted her head. Her eyes met his. They were bright despite the fear, intelligent beyond her years. "Father hid Star Map," she said in broken universal comment. "They killed him for it. Mother knows where." Lyra put her hand over her daughter's mouth, panic flooding her face. "No, Nira, no." But it was too late. The words hung in the air between them. Defiance felt his mind racing. A star map. Something valuable enough to kill for. He looked at Lyra's arms and noticed for the first time that some of her markings were different from the others. They were not natural. They were scars, deliberate and precise, forming patterns that looked almost like code. "I will come back," he said again. This time it was a promise. He left the cargo hold and walked quickly back to his cabin. His mind was spinning. He could report what the child had said to Kreth. That would be the smart thing to do, the safe thing. It would keep him out of trouble. But then what? Lyra and Nira would be sold anyway. They would disappear into the black markets of the outer systems. And whatever secret Lyra carried would be extracted from her by force. Defiance sat on his bunk and put his head in his hands. He had followed orders his whole career. He had never questioned the consortium's rules. He had convinced himself that he was just a cargo specialist, that what happened to the cargo was not his responsibility. But these were not cargo. They were people, a mother and daughter who had already lost everything. He thought about his own mother back on Earth. She had raised him alone after his father died. She had worked 3 jobs to give him a chance at a better life. She had taught him to be kind, to be brave, to stand up for what was right, even when it was hard. What would she think of him now? What would she say if she knew he had looked into a terrified child's eyes and walked away? Defiance made his decision. He did not know what he was going to do yet. He did not have a plan. But he knew one thing with absolute certainty. He was not going to let them be sold. 40-8 hours. That was all the time Defiance had before the Crimson Dawn reached the rendezvous point. 48 hours to figure out how to save 2 lives without destroying his own. He spent the first 12 hours gathering information. The ship's computer system contained details about every cargo transaction, including the sale of Lyra and Nira. The buyer was listed as a labor contractor from the Helios system, a place known for its massive mining operations. Workers there lived short, brutal lives extracting rare minerals from asteroids. But as Defiance dug deeper into the files, he found something strange. The payment for this transaction was 10 times higher than normal for indentured labor contracts. Someone wanted these 2 Ashen very badly, and it was not because they needed miners. Defiance was not a hacker, but he knew someone who was. He made his way to the ship's navigation room, where Hai-Jin was reviewing star charts for their next route. She had been his friend for 5 years, ever since they both signed on to the Crimson Dawn. She was smart, careful, and most importantly, she had a strong sense of right and wrong. "I need your help," Defiance said quietly, closing the door behind him. Hai-Jin looked up from her console. She had sharp eyes that seemed to see right through people. What kind of help? The illegal kind. She raised an eyebrow, but did not seem surprised. Tell me. Defiance explained everything. The manifest, the mother and daughter in the cargo hold, the child's words about a star map, the suspicious payment amount. As he spoke, Hai-Jin's expression grew more serious. I knew Kreth was involved in trafficking, she said when he finished. I just did not have proof. You knew? Hai-Jin stood up and locked the navigation room door. Then she pulled out a small device from her pocket and activated it. A soft hum filled the room. This will block any listening devices. We can talk freely now. Hai-Jin, what are you? I work for Human Coalition Intelligence, she said simply. I have been undercover on this ship for 8 months, investigating Kreth's operations. We suspected he was moving illegal cargo, but we needed evidence. Defiance felt like the floor had disappeared beneath his feet. You are a spy? I prefer the term intelligence officer. She smiled briefly, then her face became serious again. But right now, that does not matter. What matters is those 2 Ashen in the cargo hold. If what you are saying is true, they are not being sold for labor. They are being sold for information. The star map the child mentioned. Exactly. Hai-Jin pulled up a secure file on her console. 3 months ago, an Ashen scientist named Kale made a discovery. He found coordinates to something called a precursor cache. Have you heard of the precursors? Defiance nodded slowly. The ancient civilization. They disappeared thousands of years ago. Some people think they are extinct. Others think they evolved into something else. Whatever happened to them, they left things behind. Technology far beyond anything we have now. Most precursor. Sites contain artifacts that change everything we know about physics, biology, medicine. Governments and corporations spend billions searching for these caches. And this scientist, Kale, found one? He found the coordinates to one, maybe more. But before he could share the information with the Ashen government, his planet was attacked. He was killed. His family scattered. Hai-Jin looked at Defiance with sudden understanding. Lyra must be his widow. Defiance felt a chill run down his spine. And Nira is his daughter. The child said he hid the star map. What if he hid it in them? In their genetic code or something? That would explain the high payment. That would explain everything. Hai-Jin began typing rapidly on her console. The buyer is not a labor contractor. They must be working for someone who wants that star map. Probably the Dominion Pact. They have been aggressive about finding precursor technology. We have to help them escape. Agreed. But we need to be smart about this. Hai-Jin pulled up the ship's manifest system. If we just take them and run, Kreth will report us to the consortium. We will spend the rest of our lives in prison, and Lyra and Nira will still be captured. So what do we do? Hai-Jin smiled. It was not a warm smile. It was the smile of someone planning something clever and dangerous. We make them disappear from the system, officially. Over the next few hours, Hai-Jin taught Defiance how to falsify cargo records. It was delicate work. The consortium's computer systems had multiple layers of security, but Hai-Jin knew how to navigate them. She had been trained for this. They created a new report stating that items 847 and 848 had been damaged beyond recovery due to a malfunction in the cargo hold's environmental controls. The Ashen were supposedly deceased. Their bodies had been jettisoned into space according to standard health protocols. Will Kreth believe this? Defiance asked. Probably not. But it will buy us time. Once the records are filed with the consortium, they become official. Even Kreth cannot change them without attracting attention. The hardest part was moving Lyra and Nira without being seen. The Crimson Dawn had 37 crew members, and someone was always awake, always working. Defiance waited until the maintenance shift, when most of the crew were focused on engine repairs. He went to the cargo hold with a medical kit and some food. When Lyra saw him, she stood up protectively in front of Nira. The electronic restraints around their wrists hummed with warning. "I am going to help you," Defiance said. "But you need to trust me." "Why?" Lyra asked. "Why would you help us?" It was a fair question. Defiance had asked himself the same thing. Because it is the right thing to do. Because I have a mother too, and she taught me to be better than this. He deactivated the electronic restraints using his cargo specialist codes. The chains fell away from their wrists. Lyra rubbed her arms where the metal had pressed into her skin. The bioluminescent markings on her skin flickered slightly brighter. "We need to move quickly," Defiance said. "Follow me and do not make any noise." He led them through the cargo hold to a maintenance corridor that ran along the ship's outer hull. It was cramped and dark, lit only by emergency lights. Nira held her mother's hand tightly, her eyes wide with fear and hope. They reached an abandoned storage section that had not been used in years. The room was small and cold, but it had basic life support. Defiance had brought blankets, food, and water. "You will have to stay here for a while," he said. "It is not comfortable, but it is safe. No one comes to this section." Lyra looked around the small room, then back at Defiance. "What happens when we reach the rendezvous point?" "By then, you will officially be dead. The buyer will be angry, but they will have no legal claim. We will figure out the next step after that. You are risking everything for us." "Why?" Defiance thought about that question. He thought about all the times he had looked away, all the times he had followed orders without questioning them. He thought about the man he wanted to be versus the man he had become. "Because someone has to," he said simply. As he turned to leave, Lyra grabbed his arm. Her grip was surprisingly strong. "There is something you should know. My husband did hide the star map, but it is not just coordinates to a cache. It is coordinates to the primary vault, the main precursor repository, the place where they kept everything." Defiance stared at her. "Everything?" "Technology that could save worlds or destroy them. Knowledge that could cure any disease or create new ones. Power beyond imagination." Lyra's eyes were intense. "If the wrong people find it, the entire galaxy will burn." Before Defiance could respond, his communicator buzzed. It was Hyjin. Her voice was tight with urgency. "Defiance, we have a problem. A Dominion ship just appeared on our sensors. They are not supposed to be here for another 30 hours. Someone tipped them off." The maintenance pod shook violently as it detached from the crimson dawn. Defiance gripped the controls with white knuckles, his eyes fixed on the navigation display. Behind him, Hyjin worked frantically to mask their escape trajectory. Lyra held Nira close, both of them strapped into emergency seats. "They are scanning for us," Hyjin said. "The Dominion ship is using active sensors." "Can they detect this pod?" "Not if we stay in the debris field. Head for those broken asteroids at 270. Defiance pushed the pod's small engine as hard as he dared. The vessel was designed for short trips between ships, not for escape runs. But it was all they had. When Hyjin had received the warning about the Dominion ship arriving early, they had made a split-second decision. Stay on the Crimson Dawn and face Kref's wrath. Or run. They had chosen to run. Behind them, the Dominion warship closed in on the Crimson Dawn. Defiance watched on the display as the two ships moved into position. He felt a pang of guilt for his fellow crew members. They had done nothing wrong. But Kref had brought this on himself. "Where are we going?" Lyra asked. Her voice was steady despite everything. "Kepler 9 station," Hyjin answered. It is a neutral zone. The Consortium and the Dominion both have to follow treaty rules there. We will have some protection, at least temporarily. And then we figure out what to do with the information in your head. The journey to Kepler 9 took 6 hours. The maintenance pod's engine struggled with the distance, but it held together. When they finally docked at the station's outer ring, Defiance felt his muscles relax slightly. They had made it. Kepler to 9 was a massive structure, built over decades by multiple species working together. The upper levels were clean and regulated, home to legitimate businesses and diplomatic offices. But the lower levels, the Undercity, were different. Down there, station authorities rarely went. Down there, people asked no questions and kept no records. That was where they needed to go. They made their way through crowded corridors, past shops selling goods from 100 different worlds, past restaurants cooking foods that smelled both wonderful and strange. Nira stared at everything with wide eyes. Despite her fear, she was still a child, and the station was full of wonders she had never seen. "We need to find Tae-min," Hyjin said. "Who is Tae-min?" "An information broker. If anyone knows what to do with precursor coordinates, it is him." They found Tae-min's office in the deepest part of the Undercity, in a section where the lights flickered and the air smelled like old metal. The door was unmarked, but Hyjin knocked in a specific pattern. After a moment, it slid open. Tae-min was a human in his 50s with gray hair and sharp, calculating eyes. His office was filled with computer equipment, some of it human-made, some of it alien. Screens covered every wall, showing news feeds, market data, and encrypted communications. "Hyjin," he said with a smile. "I heard you were dead." The report said environmental failure on the Crimson Dawn. Reports can be wrong. Tae-min's eyes moved to Lyra and Nira. His smile faded. "You brought Ashen here. You know there is a bounty on Ashen survivors, right? Especially ones matching these descriptions." "I know. That is why I came to you." Tae-min gestured for them to sit. His office had chairs from at least 4 different species, none of them particularly comfortable for humans. "Tell me everything." They did. Defiance explained about finding them on the ship, about the manifest, about the escape. Hyjin added what she knew about the precursor cache and the Dominion Pact's interest. When they finished, Tae-min was quiet for a long moment. "You are in more danger than you realize," he finally said. "The Ashen were not just random victims of war. They were archivists. The precursors chose certain species to guard information about their vaults. The Ashen were one of those species." "How do you know this?" Lyra asked. "Because I have spent 30 years tracking precursor artifacts. It is what I do." Tae-min pulled up files on one of his screens. "Your husband, Kale, was not just a scientist. He was a keeper of the old knowledge. He found something no one was supposed to find. The primary vault." "Lyra already told us about that," Defiance said. "Did she tell you what is really in there?" Tae-min looked at each of them in turn. The precursors did not just leave behind technology. They left behind a choice. Access to their vaults was supposed to be a test. A civilization advanced enough to find them would have to prove they were also wise enough to use the technology responsibly. What kind of test? The kind that destroys you if you fail. The primary vault contains everything. Terraforming technology that could turn dead worlds into gardens. Medical knowledge that could cure any disease. Energy systems that could power entire star systems. But it also contains weapons. Weapons that could crack planets. Weapons that could ignite stars. Weapons that make nuclear bombs look like children's toys. Nira suddenly spoke up. "Father said the vault was a mirror. It shows you what you are." Everyone looked at the little girl. She had been quiet during the entire conversation, but now she spoke with a clarity It seemed strange for someone so young. "What do you mean, Nira?" Lyra asked gently. "Father told me before they came. He said the vault looks into your heart. If you come with good intentions, it gives you knowledge. If you come with greed, it gives you destruction." Tae Min stared at the child. "Your father told you this?" "Yes. He also told me the coordinates. He sang them to me as a song, so I would remember." The room fell silent. Defiance felt the weight of what that meant. The coordinates were not just in Lyra's genetic code. They were in a child's memory, disguised as a lullaby. "This changes everything," Hyjin said. "If the Dominion Pact gets hold of Nira, they will extract every memory she has," Tae Min finished. "They will tear her mind apart to get those coordinates." Lyra pulled Nira close, her bioluminescent markings flickering with distress. "What do we do?" Before anyone could answer, alarms began blaring throughout the station. Red lights flashed in the corridors outside. Tae Min's screens all switched to emergency broadcasts. "Security breach in the Undercity," a mechanical voice announced. "All residents shelter in place." "Repeat, shelter in place." Tae Min pulled up security camera feeds. Defiance felt his stomach drop. Armed figures in black armor were moving through the Undercity corridors, scanning every face they passed. They were systematic, professional, and heavily armed. "Dominion Special Forces," Hyjin whispered. "How did they find us so fast?" "Kref," Defiance said bitterly. "He must have told them everything." "We need to move," Tae Min said, already pulling weapons from hidden compartments in his office. "I know a way through the maintenance tunnels. But we need to go now." They ran. Through narrow corridors, down emergency ladders, through sections of the station that were barely functional. Nira kept pace surprisingly well, her small legs carrying her as fast as they could. But Defiance could hear the pursuing footsteps behind them, getting closer. They emerged into a cargo bay where dozens of Ashen refugees were hiding. When Lyra saw them, she gasped. These were her people, survivors like her, trying to stay invisible in a galaxy that wanted to either use them or destroy them. Not an older human man approached them. "You brought danger here," he said to Defiance, but his voice was not angry. It was resigned. "I am sorry. We did not know they would follow so fast. My name is Dong Min. I have been protecting these refugees for 6 months." He looked at Lyra and Nira. "You are Kale's family. I knew your husband. He was a good man. You knew him?" "I was with him when he opened the primary vault. I was his research assistant." Dong Min's eyes were sad. "He made me promise to protect you if anything happened to him. I have been searching for you ever since your planet fell." The door to the cargo bay exploded inward. Smoke filled the air. Through it, figures in black armor emerged, weapons raised. At their head was a woman with cold eyes and a scar running down her left cheek. "My name is Sujin," she said calmly. "I am a bounty hunter, and there is a very large price on these 2 Ashen. Hand them over, and the rest of you can live." Dong Min stepped forward. "These refugees are under my protection." Sujin smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. "Then you will die with them." But before anyone could move, Nira stepped away from her mother. The little girl walked forward, her bioluminescent markings suddenly blazing with light. The entire cargo bay lit up with blue brilliance. "The vault is calling," Nira said in a voice that did not sound entirely her own. "It knows someone is coming. It knows someone has found the way." Sujin raised her weapon, but suddenly all the electronic equipment in the cargo bay went dead. Lights, guns, communicators, everything shut down at once. In the darkness, Nira's glowing markings were the only source of light. "What is happening?" Defiance whispered. Lyra's voice shook with fear and wonder. "The vault. It is awakening." My daughter is connected to it somehow. Kale must have done something before he died. When the lights came back on, Sujin and her team were unconscious on the floor. Nira collapsed into her mother's arms, her markings dimming back to normal. We need to leave Kepler-9, Haijin said. Whatever just happened, it is going to attract more attention than we can handle. Dongmin nodded. I know a ship, and I know where the primary vault is located. If we are going to end this, we need to go there. We need to finish what Kale started. Dai Haiyan looked at the unconscious bounty hunter, at the frightened refugees, at the little girl who had just done something impossible. He had thought saving 2 lives would be simple. He had thought he was just doing the right thing. He had no idea how wrong he was. The stolen freighter rattled and groaned as it jumped through hyperspace. It was an old vessel, barely holding together, but Dongmin had assured them it was fast enough to outrun most pursuers. Dai Haiyan hoped he was right. In the small crew quarters, Nira slept fitfully in her mother's arms. The child had not spoken since the incident on Kepler-9, when all the electronics had died around her. Lyra stroked her daughter's hair, her bioluminescent markings pulsing with anxiety. Is she going to be okay? Dai Haiyan asked quietly. I do not know, Lyra admitted. My husband did something to her before he died. Some kind of genetic modification. I did not understand it at the time. He said it was necessary, that someone needed to carry the key if he could not. Haijin entered the quarters, her face grim. We have a problem. Multiple problems, actually. Tell us. First, Sujin survived. She and her team escaped from Kepler-9 security. She is coming after us. Second, the Dominion Pact has mobilized a fleet. They are heading toward the Rift Nebula. That is where the primary vault is located, Dongmin said, entering behind Haijin. In orbit around a collapsed star. Your husband chose the location carefully, Lyra. It is dangerous to approach. The gravitational forces are extreme. How do they know where to go? Dai Haiyan asked. Because I told them. Everyone turned to stare at Dongmin. The older man looked ashamed but resolute. Not directly. But I have been communicating with certain parties. Information brokers. Collectors. I needed money to protect the refugees. I sold pieces of Kale's research. Small pieces, nothing that would lead directly to the vault. But I underestimated them. They put it together. You betrayed us, Lyra said, her voice cold. I betrayed no one. I protected hundreds of your people for 6 months. I kept them fed, kept them hidden, kept them alive. Do you know what that costs? Dongmin's voice rose with emotion. I did what I had to do. But now I am here, helping you finish this. That has to count for something. Haijin held up a hand. Fighting about this will not help. What matters now is that everyone is heading to the same place. The Dominion Pact, probably the human coalition, once they figure out what is happening, maybe others. This is going to be a convergence. What about your coalition? Dai Haiyan asked Haijin. Can they help us? I sent a message to my handlers, but their response was not what I expected. Haijin pulled out her communicator and played a recorded message. A stern voice filled the room. Agent Haijin, your orders are to secure the precursor vault for the human coalition by any means necessary. The potential technology within represents a strategic advantage we cannot allow other factions to obtain. Eliminate any opposition. Retrieve the Ashen subjects and extract all information they possess. Failure is not an option. The message ended. Haijin looked at her friends. So now my own government wants me to turn you over. Will you? Lyra asked. No. Haijin destroyed the communicator, crushing it under her boot. I joined intelligence because I wanted to protect humanity. But this is not protection. This is conquest. I will not be part of it. Defiance felt a surge of respect for his friend. She was giving up everything, her career, possibly her freedom, to stand with them. So what do we do? He asked. Dong-Min pulled up a star chart on the ship's display. The primary vault has defenses. Your husband activated them before he died, Lyra. Any ship approaching with hostile intent will be destroyed. The vault can read intentions somehow. I do not understand the technology, but I saw it work. A pirate ship tried to approach while we were there. It was vaporized in seconds. So how do we get close? With peaceful intentions, with the right access codes, and with someone who carries Kale's genetic key. Dong-Min looked at Nira. She is the key. The vault will recognize her. Over the next 2 days, they prepared as best they could. Defiance had no combat training, but Haijin taught him the basics of using a pulse rifle. Dong-Min shared everything he knew about the vault's location and defenses. Lyra spent hours with Nira, helping her remember the song her father had taught her. As they approached the Rift Nebula, the ship's sensors began picking up other vessels. Dozens of them. Ships from multiple factions, all converging on the same point. The human coalition is here, Haijin said, identifying ship signatures. 3 cruisers. The Dominion Pact has 4 warships, and there are others I do not recognize. Probably mercenaries and treasure hunters. This is going to be a battle, Defiance said. No. Nira's small voice made everyone turn. The little girl was standing now, her eyes focused on the viewport. It is going to be a test. The vault is waiting. It wants to see what we will do. Through the viewport, they could see it now. The primary vault. It was enormous, a structure the size of a small moon, covered in patterns that seemed to shift and move. It orbited a collapsed star, a dense point of gravity that bent light around it. The entire scene looked like something from a dream, and surrounding it, the fleet was gathering. Ships took up positions, weapons powered, shields raised. But no one fired. Not yet. They were all waiting to see who would make the first move. Incoming transmission, Dong-Min said. It is on all frequencies. They want everyone to hear. A woman's face appeared on the screen. She was older, with silver hair and hard eyes. She wore the uniform of a Dominion admiral. This is Admiral Vex of the Dominion Pact. The precursor vault is a threat to galactic stability. We are here to secure it for the safety of all species. Any vessel attempting to approach will be destroyed. You have 1 hour to leave this sector. She is lying, Haijin said. The Dominion does not care about safety. They want the weapons inside. Another transmission came through, this time from a human coalition captain. This is Captain Young. The precursor vault represents humanity's heritage. We claim it under the Universal Heritage Treaty. All other factions must withdraw. More transmissions followed, each faction claiming the vault for themselves, each threatening the others. The situation was deteriorating rapidly. We need to get to the vault before this turns into a war, Defiance said. How? We cannot fight through that fleet. Nira walked up to the communications panel. She placed her small hand on it, and her bioluminescent markings began to glow. Suddenly, every ship in the fleet received a new transmission. But it was not from any of them, It was a voice. Ancient, vast, speaking in a language that should not have been understandable, but somehow was. The primary vault acknowledges the presence of a key-bearer. The test begins now. Those who come in peace may approach. Those who come with violence will be judged. The vault's surface lit up with brilliant light. Energy patterns danced across its structure. And then, one by one, ships began to explode. Not randomly, but specifically. Every vessel that had its weapons charged, every ship that had hostile intent, was targeted by beams of light from the vault. The Dominion warships tried to return fire, but their weapons did not work. Instead, their own power systems overloaded. Ships went dark, drifting helplessly. "It is reading them," Lyra whispered in awe. "The vault is reading their intentions." Their own ship shook as a beam of light swept over it. But nothing happened. They were not destroyed. Instead, a pathway opened in the vault's surface, an entrance just large enough for one small vessel. "That is for us," Nira said. Her voice was calm now, certain. "The vault wants us to enter." Dong Min piloted the ship toward the entrance. Behind them, the fleet was in chaos. Some ships were fleeing, others were dead in space, and a few were fighting each other in the confusion. But one ship followed them. A small, fast vessel that matched their every move. "It is Sujin," Haijin said, checking sensors. "She is still coming. How is she getting past the defenses?" Daihayan asked. "She is following in our wake, staying close enough that the vault reads her as part of our group." They entered the vault's structure, flying through corridors that seemed to go on forever. The walls glowed with strange symbols. The ship's instruments could not make sense of the readings. Space itself seemed different here, and in ways that should not be possible. Finally, they reached a chamber. It was vast, cathedral-like, filled with floating platforms and columns of light. At the center was a structure that looked like a sphere made of pure energy. "The precursor interface," Dong Min breathed. "Your husband made it this far before he died, Lyra. This is where he recorded his final message." They landed the ship and stepped out onto one of the platforms. The air felt strange, almost alive. Nira walked forward without fear, drawn toward the glowing sphere. "Nira, wait," Lyra called, but before anyone could stop her, Sujin's ship landed behind them. The bounty hunter emerged, weapon drawn. She was battered and angry, her armor scorched from the vault's defenses. "End of the line," Sujin said. "I am taking the child. The Dominion Pact is paying triple for her now." "You cannot use weapons here," Haijin said. "The vault will not allow it." Sujin pulled the trigger. Nothing happened. Her weapon was dead. She threw it aside and pulled out a blade. "Then I will do this the old way?" Daihayan stepped between Sujin and Nira. He had no weapons, no training, nothing but the determination to protect a child he had known for only a few days. "You will have to go through me," he said. Sujin smiled. "That can be arranged." But before she could attack, the precursor interface flared with light. The sphere opened, and inside it, a figure appeared. Not a solid form, but a projection. A recording dot, it was Kale. Lyra gasped and reached out toward the image of her dead husband. "If you are seeing this," Kale's voice echoed through the chamber, "then someone has brought my family to safety. Someone has chosen compassion over profit, courage over fear. Thank you. You have passed the first test." The recording continued. "The primary vault contains everything my people knew, everything the precursors left behind. But it is not treasure. It is responsibility. To access it, you must make a choice. Take it for yourself and gain power beyond measure. Share it with all and gain wisdom beyond measure. But choose quickly. Others are coming. And not everyone has passed the test." Kale's image flickered in the glowing sphere, frozen in time like a ghost waiting to deliver its final message. Lyra stood before it with tears streaming down her face, her hand reaching toward her dead husband's face. Nira pressed against her mother's side, staring at the father she barely remembered. Daihayan kept his eyes on Sujin. The bounty hunter had lowered her blade slightly, distracted by the holographic projection. But he knew she was still dangerous, still determined to complete her mission. "The primary vault is not what people think it is," Kale's voice continued. "The precursors did not leave. because they died out or evolved beyond our understanding. They left because they learned the most important lesson any civilization can learn. Power without wisdom leads only to destruction. Technology without compassion leads only to suffering. The sphere expanded, filling the chamber with light. Images appeared in the air around them. Images of the precursors, tall beings made of energy and matter combined. Images of their civilization at its height, spanning galaxies, controlling forces that could reshape reality itself. They had everything, Kale said. They could create stars, destroy planets, cure any disease, extend life indefinitely. But they also saw what that power did to them. It made them arrogant. It made them cruel. They began to see other species as lesser, as tools to be used or obstacles to be removed. More images appeared. War, destruction, entire civilizations wiped out by precursor weapons. A galaxy burning. They realized too late what they had become. So they made a choice. They dismantled their empire. They scattered their technology across the galaxy in vaults, like this one. And they set tests. Not tests of intelligence or strength, but tests of character. They wanted to see if any species could be better than they were. If any civilization could find their technology and choose to use it wisely. The images faded. Kale's projection became clearer, more focused. This vault contains everything. Medical knowledge that could save billions of lives. Agricultural technology that could end hunger on every world. Energy systems that could power civilizations without destroying their planets. But it also contains weapons. Weapons that make our worst nightmares look like children's toys. Defiance felt the weight of those words. He had come here to save 2 lives. He had not expected to be standing at the crossroads of galactic history. The choice is simple, Kale said. Take the technology for one species, one faction, one government, and use it to dominate all others. Or share it freely with all species, and risk that some will use it for evil. There is no perfect answer. There is only the choice that reveals who you truly are. The projection looked directly at Lyra. My wife. My love, if you are seeing this, I am sorry I could not protect you in Nira. But I did the only thing I could. I encoded the access codes in our daughter's genetic structure. Only she can open the vault fully. Only she can make the final choice. Nira stepped forward, away from her mother. The little girl walked toward the glowing sphere with a calm that seemed beyond her years. Her bioluminescent markings blazed with light, brighter than Defiance had ever seen them. I remember now, Nira said softly. Father sang to me every night. He told me stories about the stars. He was teaching me, preparing me. She reached out and touched the sphere. The entire vault shook. Energy pulsed through the structure, and suddenly the chamber changed. Platforms extended from the walls. Columns of light became solid corridors. And in the center, a doorway opened. Through that doorway, Defiance could see wonders. Rooms filled with technology beyond understanding. Archives containing the knowledge of civilizations that had risen and fallen long before humans had even dreamed of reaching TH. E-stars, gardens growing in impossible geometries, machines that hummed with purposes he could not begin to guess. The vault is open, Dongmin whispered. Fully open. No one has seen this since the precursors themselves. But they were not alone. A tremor shook the chamber as another ship crashed through the entrance they had used. It was a Dominion assault craft, badly damaged but still functional. Admiral Vex emerged with a squad of soldiers behind her. Their weapons did not work, disabled by the vault's defenses, but they carried shock batons and energy nets. Stand aside, Vex commanded. Her voice was cold and hard. This vault belongs to the Dominion Pact. We will use it to bring order to a chaotic galaxy. Behind her, More ships arrived. Human coalition forces, their own weapons disabled, but carrying stun grenades. Then mercenaries, treasure hunters, representatives from a dozen different factions. All of them had followed the opening of the vault. All of them wanted what was inside. "You cannot have it," Lyra said, stepping between the approaching forces and her daughter. "This is not treasure to be taken. It is a responsibility to be shared." "Shared?" Vex laughed bitterly. "With everyone? Do you know what would happen? Within a year, half the galaxy would be at war. Every minor faction would have access to weapons that could destroy solar systems. Every terrorist group would have the ability to create plagues that could wipe out species. Chaos would consume everything." "She is right," Captain Yang said, stepping forward from the human coalition forces. "The only responsible choice is to secure this technology and distribute it carefully, under proper oversight." "Your oversight," Hyjin said. "Which means humanity gets to decide what every other species receives. That is not sharing. That is domination." The different factions began arguing with each other. Some wanted the vault destroyed entirely. Others wanted it divided up. Still others insisted their own faction should control it. The chamber filled with angry voices. Each one convinced they had the right answer. Sujin used the chaos to move closer to Nira. But Defiance saw her coming. He positioned himself between the bounty hunter and the child once again. "Why do you care so much?" Sujin asked him. "You are nobody. A cargo specialist who threw away his career for 2 aliens you barely know. What makes you think you have the right to decide the fate of this vault?" It was a good question. Defiance had asked himself the same thing many times over the past few days. He was nobody special. He had no authority, no power, no particular wisdom. He was just a man who had seen 2 terrified people in a cargo hold and decided he could not walk away. "I do not have the right to decide," Defiance said quietly. "None of us do. Not me, not you, not the Dominion Pact or the Human Coalition or anyone else. That is the point." He turned to look at Nira. The little girl was still standing by the glowing sphere, her hand resting on its surface. She looked so small, so fragile, but her eyes held something ancient, something that came from the genetic modifications her father had made. "Nira," Defiance said gently, "your father left this choice to you, not because you are special or powerful, but because you are innocent. You have no faction, no agenda, no desire for power. What do you think should happen?" Nira looked at all the people in the chamber, the soldiers with their weapons, the admiral with her cold eyes, the treasure hunters with their greed, the frightened refugees who just wanted safety, her mother, who wanted only to protect her, and Defiance, who had risked everything for 2 people he did not even know. "I think," Nira said slowly, "that my father was right. Power without wisdom is dangerous, but wisdom without power cannot help anyone." She turned back to the sphere and spoke in a language that no one in the chamber knew, but somehow everyone understood. It was the language of the precursors, encoded in her genes, taught to her through her father's songs. The vault responded. The doorway at the chamber's center changed. Instead of leading to rooms filled with technology, it became something else. A portal, and through that portal, information began to flow. Not physical objects, not weapons or machines, but knowledge itself. Every ship in orbit around the vault, regardless of faction or species, began receiving data. Medical information, agricultural techniques, clean energy designs, mathematics, physics, biology, chemistry. Everything the precursors had learned, offered freely to anyone who could understand it, but the weapons were not included. The destructive technology was sealed away, locked behind barriers that would take generations to break if they could be broken at all. "What have you done?" Admiral Vex demanded. She shared it, Lyra said with wonder in her voice. She shared the knowledge, but not the power to destroy. The vault is giving everyone the chance to grow, to improve, to become better. But it is not giving anyone the means to dominate others. Captain Young checked his communicator. My ship is receiving thousands of files. Medical research that could cure diseases we thought were incurable. Energy systems that could replace fusion reactors. This is what the precursors wanted, Dongmin finished. A chance for all species to advance together, rather than one species ruling all others. Su-Jin lowered her blade. The bounty hunter looked at Nira with something like respect in her eyes. The contract is void anyway. No one will pay for a child who just gave away the galaxy's greatest treasure. Vex was not satisfied. This is not over. The Dominion will find a way to access the weapons eventually. Maybe, Hai-Jin said. But by then, every other species will have advanced too. You will not have the overwhelming advantage you wanted. The galaxy will be more balanced. And that will make war less likely, not more. The Admiral turned and left, her soldiers following. Other factions began departing as well, some angry, others thoughtful. All of them changed by what they had witnessed. Defiance knelt down beside Nira. The little girl's bioluminescent markings had dimmed back to their normal soft glow. She looked tired but peaceful. You did something incredible, he told her. I did what Father wanted. He said the galaxy needed a chance to be better. I just gave everyone that chance. Lyra pulled her daughter into her arms, holding her tight. Your father would be so proud of you. Over the next few months, the galaxy changed. The knowledge from the primary vault spread rapidly. Diseases that had plagued species for generations were cured. Food production increased dramatically. Energy became cheaper and cleaner. Some factions tried to keep the knowledge for themselves, but it was too late. Too many people had received it. Too many scientists and engineers and doctors had seen what was possible. There were still conflicts. The Dominion Pact did not give up its aggressive ambitions. Pirates and criminals tried to use the new technology for evil purposes. But overall, the galaxy moved in a better direction. Defiance found himself in an unexpected position. The human coalition offered him a role as a liaison, helping to coordinate the distribution and implementation of precursor knowledge. He accepted, but only on the condition that he could continue to help refugees like Lyra and Nira. Hai-Jin resigned from intelligence work and joined him. Together, they established an organization dedicated to protecting vulnerable species and ensuring that no one was left behind in the new era of advancement. Lyra and Nira were granted sanctuary on a restored Ashen colony world. Other survivors joined them there, rebuilding what had been lost. The world was small, but it was theirs, and it was safe. 1 year after the opening of the vault, Defiance visited them. The colony had grown into a thriving community. Children played in gardens that used precursor agricultural technology. Hospitals treated patients with medical techniques that would have seemed like magic a year ago. It was not perfect, but it was good. Nira ran to meet him as his ship landed. She was taller now, healthier, happier. Her bioluminescent markings glowed with joy. Will you stay this time? She asked. Defiance smiled and shook his head gently. I cannot. There are other people who need help. Other cargo holds with frightened people inside. Other chances to make a difference, like you did for us, like I did for you. Lyra joined them, her own markings bright with gratitude. Thank you, Defiance, for everything, for seeing us as people instead of cargo, for risking your life, for helping my daughter change the galaxy. I just made one choice, Defiance said. One moment where I decided to do the right thing instead of following orders. I did not know it would lead to all this. That is how change happens, Lyra said. One choice at a time. One person deciding to be brave when it would be easier to look away. As Defiance's ship lifted off from the colony, he looked down at the ashen world below. Lights glowed across its surface, signs of life and hope and future. He thought about the cargo manifest that had started everything. 2 lines describing living beings as salvage property. He had defied those orders. He had chosen compassion over compliance. And somehow, impossibly, it had changed everything. The stars stretched out before him, infinite and full of possibility. Somewhere out there, someone else needed help. Someone else was waiting in a cargo hold, hoping that just one person would choose to care. Defiance set his course and engaged the engines. He had work to do. Behind him, the ashen colony's bioluminescent markings created patterns visible from orbit, ancient symbols that meant hope, gratitude, and friendship. But to Defiance, they meant something simpler.